I said, but tell me about the Democrat Party. Have they done anything for black people in all the years that you have seen black people voting? Have they done anything for black people? Could you just name one thing that you could tell me concrete, like, yes, the Democrat Party has done this, and that, and this is why we vote for them so much. My father told me that the Democrat Party has done nothing for black people. He said that they come around every 2 years, knocking on your door, leaving flyers and all of that, going to your church, asking us to vote for them. And he said, after you vote for them, they disappear. You never see them again until 2 years later. Then here they coming back, saying the same thing. He said, you never see them in the community. You don't know really anything they're doing. And it's a perpetual cycle that's been happening for a long time.
Welcome to the Sabby Sab Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. So yes, tonight we are going to have a pretty deep discussion here about the Democratic Party, in particular in reference to the midterm elections. And I wanted to play that clip there because it reaffirms something I've been saying for a while, that the Democratic Party doesn't actually do anything for African Americans. And yet we continue to find ourselves in this cycle over and over and over again. So tonight, we have a theme. We are focusing on the Democratic Party in reference to the midterms. So tonight, we are going to discuss, there's two stories that deal with this. The first story has to deal with funding. The second news story has to deal with the trouble that the Democratic candidates may be facing in the midterms, which is just around the corner. So tonight we are going to discuss Briahna Joy Gray funding warning for leftists. And you can see in that image there's Bree, AOC, and the other woman on the right, that is Summer Lee. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with her, but she is a progressive candidate. We're also going to discuss midterm troubles for Dems. So we have Fetterman, Oz, Walker, and of course, Warnock. And I want to focus particularly on those races, and I'm going to get to the reason in a bit. So let's get into it. So first, we're going to start off here with this story from Briahna Joy Gray, because oftentimes, like especially on RBN, we talk about the money a lot, right? Like money is a problem in politics. This is something that we know, but no one has come up with a solution to fix corporate money in politics. And so all of these candidates, whether they're progressive or not, they keep coming up against this particular issue. And one of the things that I've told you is that the donors don't really care what party you're in. They have the same donors. And sometimes, depending on where you stand on a particular issue, a donor or a PAC may decide to go against you, even if your opponent is on the other side. And that is exactly what is happening right now to Summer Lee, who is a progressive. She is being challenged by AIPAC, a PAC that is going against her and is supporting the Republican candidate. Let's go ahead and get into that clip. I hate to say that I told you so, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to money. So let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
What's on your radar, Briahna?
Well, you know how I'm always saying the most important issues in this country are top down, not left, right? But it's a big club and you're not in it. How big corporations like the insurance companies and healthcare companies that abandon you when you're sick, the defense contractors that fund endless wars, and the big tech companies that censure you all give to Republicans and Democrats alike to ensure that whatever party wins an election, they are guaranteed to come out on top? Well, a new story about AIPAC, the group founded to lobby American politicians for favorable policies toward the Israeli government, exposes just how thoroughly elites have rigged our political system to undermine your voting power and, in effect, choose American Congress members. You might recall me mentioning in an old radar that Summer Lee, a Pennsylvania progressive, won a tough primary race back in May, despite AIPAC's PAC spending over $2 million against Lee and $660,000 in favor of her centrist establishment opponent in the Democratic Party.
Okay, I want to chime in here for just a second. So when Summer Lee was running in her primary, AIPAC also put up money against her for her opponent. Now, at that point, her opponent was another Democrat, a corporate Democrat. Now, you may be wondering, why would they have done that to Summer Lee? I'm going to get into that article in just a second to explain to you why they're putting up money against her. And it's no different from the reason as to why they put up money against Nina Turner when she ran in her election, or her most recent election. But now they're even willing to put up money against the Democrat candidate and in support of the Republican candidate. That's how far they're willing to go. Let's go on.
AIPAC ads targeted her as not a real Democrat. Let's take a look.
She calls herself a Democrat, but Summer Lee said she wanted to dismantle the Democratic Party, dismantle it, and she's done everything in her power to do just that. When Joe Biden was running against Trump, Summer Lee attacked Biden's character, said he'd take us backwards.
Okay, so far, if you are a Justice Democrat candidate, what is wrong with that? Absolutely nothing. That is what the Justice Democrats are supposed to do. They are supposed to challenge the corporate Democrats. So if you're a progressive candidate, you shouldn't have been in favor of Joe Biden anyway. Two, in reference to dismantling the Democratic Party, that is absolutely what the Justice Democrats were designed to do. They were supposed to come in and take over the Democratic Party. Now, obviously, that has not happened. We've seen them just fall in line with the corporate Democrats instead. But this attack ad here, so far, it really doesn't make any sense, because I could understand if this was something she was not supposed to do, if she was a corporate Democrat. But as a progressive Democrat, as a part of Justice Democrats, that is exactly what she is supposed to do. But this story goes further.
And Lee refused to support Biden's infrastructure plan that's now rebuilding bridges and roads in Western Pennsylvania. Summer Lee, more interested in fighting Democrats than getting results. UDP is responsible for the content of this ad.
Critical of Biden, wants to dismantle the warmongering Democratic Party. Honestly, I know that's supposed to be an attack ad, but she'd have my vote. All kidding aside, the valence of AIPAC's ad is clear. The Democratic Party is good and should be protected, and voters who share that ideology should vote for Lee's opponent. That being the case, how wild is it that AIPAC is now supporting Lee's Republican opponent in the general election? This story broke over the weekend. AIPAC, which, as I explained in a recent radar, has tried to put some on the scale against anti-establishment left candidates who are critical of Israel's treatment of Palestinians, is spending nearly $80,000 on Lee's opponent, who just happens to have the same name as the outgoing Democratic Representative Mike Doyle. They're literally trying to trick Democratic voters into voting for a familiar name. But of course, this Mike Doyle is a Republican. See, it seems AIPAC doesn't care who wins, D or R, as long as the candidate is the same type of milquetoast, pro-blob establishment figure that will routinely sign off on unbounded aid packages for Israel, ignoring the apartheid conditions of the Palestinian people.
This is the key. That piece is so important, because what you have to understand, regardless if the candidate is a Democrat or Republican, the donors, these PACs, they're just looking to support whoever is going to push their agenda. It doesn't matter if you have a D or R next to your name. And why is this incredibly troubling for progressives? Because what it shows you is that once again, even though these progressive candidates may have run grassroots campaigns, is it enough to help them defeat all the corporate money that comes in for their opponent? Now, we saw in the case with Nina Turner, not so much. Summer Lee was able to beat this in her primary, but will she be able to beat it in the general election? And what people have to understand is that the Democratic Party, they have found a way to make sure that more progressives do not get in. So the first round of the squad that came through, AOC, Pramila Jayapal, all of them, well, I guess we don't really count Pramila Jayapal. Technically, she was part of Brand New Congress and kind of merged over. But the original core squad, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, they got in. If you've noticed, though, since then, how many other progressive candidates got in? We had Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, but remember, Cori Bush, that was her second time running, right? So they have found a way to beat them. They adjusted their strategy to prevent more of them from coming in. And this is why I still say, for those of you who do want to do that strategy, you have to figure out how to get corporate money out of politics. Now, I know at one point there was a big push to end Citizens United. That kind of flopped and went away. But as long as the corporate money is there, this will continue to be an issue. There were several progressive candidates that ran for 2022. You probably don't know about half of them because most of them did not win their primary. So there were way more this time than there were before. And less got in. You see what I'm saying? Less won their primaries. So until they find a way to remove corporate money from politics, every progressive candidate that runs from here on out is going to come up against this particular issue. But why this PAC? Why AIPAC? What did Summer Lee do, or what did she say that could have made them decide not to support her and to go against her? We'll get into it.
As a reminder, in Gaza, over 1.8 million Palestinians live in just 140 square miles of land in conditions described by former Prime Minister David Cameron as an open-air prison. To maintain or improve the geopolitical status quo, which includes a $38 billion overall military aid package signed by Obama, AIPAC has demonstrated that it is willing to smear anti-establishment candidates. Lee was accused of anti-Semitism, for example, for explaining how the phrase "Israel has a right to defend itself" had been used to justify atrocities against Palestinians.
That phrase right there, that's important to note. So a while back, Summer Lee did say that. I think I covered this a couple of months ago. She did say that. But then she went on further to explain in more detail later on what she really meant by that, and that she actually would support the state of Israel. Now, you guys know how I feel about this issue if you've been watching us for a long time. I'm not for any candidate who's against BDS. BDS is a Palestinian-led movement. And to me, if you're against that, then that means you really not trying to give Palestinian people any type of sovereignty, any type of freedom. That's a problem. But what is happening now in a lot of these races is that even some of the most progressive candidates per se are having to adjust their own moral beliefs just so they can get the support from AIPAC so that they can win. And we saw Nina Turner do this flip as well. It did not work. She still lost. So what is it all for? And what is really interesting, these are two African-American candidates. So you had Nina Turner and you had Summer Lee. And to see them like even just walk back, even just a little bit on their statements just so they can please the pack so that they can get in. It's very upsetting that it's gotten to this point that even African-American candidates are willing to go against what they may feel in their heart just so they can get a seat at the table. You don't see other minority communities do this to each other. And I want to make a point here because this is important. You don't see it. You don't see Jewish people turning on the entire Jewish community. Now, they may not agree with the state of Israel per se, but for the most part, you don't see them selling each other out. You don't see Asian Americans doing this either. You don't see the Latino community doing this either. It only seems to work when we're looking at minority groups. It only seems to work with African Americans. We're always the ones that are willing to make that leap just so we can have a seat at the table to walk our statements back, even if that's what we really feel, to change our opinion, even if we really felt what we said, just so we can have a seat at the table with a group of people that don't really want you there anyway. And I think it's a damn shame. We're the only ones. Let's go back in.
Of course, every country has a right to defend itself. But defending yourself isn't the issue when you're attacking worshipers at Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is what Lee was responding to at the time of her tweets. Even Jewish politicians aren't safe. AIPAC spent millions to successfully defeat Andrew Lavin in the spring. It even went to war, against America's most popular Jewish politician, Bernard Sanders. Now, of course, anti-Semitism is real, but AIPAC's involvement in these races isn't actually about anti-Semitism or protecting the interests of Jewish Americans. It's an explicitly pro-Israel lobbying group, not a pro-Jewish lobbying group, and it expressly aims to promote the security interests of Israel. This should not be controversial. It's what their website advertises, but I suspect my saying this will bring some charges of anti-Semitism. Why? Because it is, in fact, an anti-Semitic trope to imply that Jewish people have dual loyalty. According to the World Jewish Congress, anti-Semites allege that the true allegiance of Jewish people is to their fellow Jews, and that therefore they are inherently disloyal citizens and cannot be trusted. And casting the Jew as the other, this anti-Semitic trope, which has existed for thousands of years, has been used to scapegoat, harass, and vilify Jews, and at times has even led to murder. So because of that trope, I want to be really, really clear. AIPAC is a lobbying group that advocates pro-Israel policies to the legislative and executive branches of the United States. Its mission statement is not about protecting the Jewish people at large. Its stated mission is to promote pro-Israeli policies. I'm pointing out that what is good for Israel as a country might not be in the best interest of some American Jews, or American goys is not anti-Semitic in and of itself. And yet, when AOC called AIPAC out for funding both sides of this Pennsylvania race, AIPAC slammed her as anti-Semitic. Her crime, saying, quote, "Shamefully, AIPAC is working for Republican control of Congress and further destabilization of U.S. democracy."
Okay, so this is my problem here. And I want to be very clear about this. Look, I have many criticisms of AOC, but the problem that we are running into when it comes to this conflict between Israel and Palestine, it has gotten to the point now where you can't have any criticism, if you have any criticism about the state of Israel, and let's be clear what's happening there. You have the Israeli government that is trying to basically push the Palestinian people out off the land or kill them. And Netanyahu is coming back, by the way. You have the Israeli government who also, they were pushing African people, the Ethiopian Jews, out of the land, off the land. So yes, it is becoming an apartheid state. The problem is, though, you can't even have criticism. You can't even have that type of criticism, or you will be labeled as anti-Semitic. So to AOC's point here, when she says shamefully, AIPAC is working for Republican control of Congress and further destabilization of U.S. democracy, how is that anti-Semitic? It isn't. And yet she's already being called that because of that tweet. Do you see how dangerous this is?
In response, executive director at stopantisemitism.org said, quote, the thinly veiled intent behind AOC's tweet to vilify a Jewish organization is crystal clear and further contributes to the vilification of American Jews. AOC's intentional isolation of AIPAC and her failure to call out the numerous bipartisan and left-leaning groups working to keep Justice Democrat candidate Summer Lee out of office shows her true colors, the rep continued. Now, in my humble Gentile opinion, slotting in American Jews as the party being vilified here, when the criticism is of a literal lobbying firm, is a pretty slick move that doesn't show a lot of respect for the diversity of thought among Jewish Americans, including many younger Jewish folks who tend to be more critical of Israeli foreign policy. But putting that aside, if you follow AIPAC's logic to its logical conclusion, AOC is forbidden from talking about how a super PAC is giving on both sides of an election, a super PAC that has donated more than almost every other group because the country it represents was established as a Jewish state.
Do you see the problem? You see the problem? And you know what? Maybe AOC should have made this same statement when they put up money against Nina Turner, but she was silent. All of them were actually. They were told they were not allowed to speak in support of Nina Turner. Some of them were threatened, as Nina Turner stated. But now I guess it's okay to say it. You see what I mean? Like now it's okay to speak out. It's just, they play this game. So you can't even speak out about it now. Now I want to show you what Summer Lee said that got her to this point to begin with. This is a problem. So this article, let me make sure I make this larger for you. This article here, so it says Summer Lee pushes back against charges that she's anti-Israel. So listen to this. Now, this was April 6, 2022. That's how far back this goes. I'm gonna make this a little bit larger. Oh, maybe not. It's one of those kind of articles. In a wide-ranging and occasionally tense discussion with the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh's Community Relations Council on Monday evening, Summer Lee, a progressive state legislator, I have to make this bigger. They need to do something about this text. There we go. Okay, a progressive legislator and leading the Democratic primary candidate in Pennsylvania's 12th congressional district. So this was right before she won the primary. It goes on to say, publicly clarified her views on a host of Middle East foreign policy issues for the first time since launching her campaign. The hour-long exchange live streamed on Facebook was a particular interest to Jewish voters in Pittsburgh who have expressed reservations over Lee's affiliation with the party's far left flank, as well as some social media comments on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that have drawn scrutiny. So here's the problem here. Steve Irwin, an attorney and longtime Democratic activist in Pittsburgh, charged in a recent interview with Jewish Insider that Lee's past statements do not indicate a strong conviction that Israel has the right to exist. Let me come out here for just a second. It's really interesting. And we were talking about this a little bit last night too, but we're still bringing into it. We were talking about this a little bit last night, and I made it very clear. The progressive space has no room for Black people anymore. Just does not have it. Doesn't have it. Because I noticed all this immense pressure on the Black candidates to say that they support the state of Israel. All this immense pressure on the Black candidates, the progressive Black candidates, to not really be for issues that they call far left, even though they're issues that affect the Black community. You can't say defund the police. They can't be in support of defunding the police. They can't be in support of reparations. They can't be in support of any policy that is solely and predominantly linked to the African American community. But they're supposed to embrace all the white policies. You see the problem? This is a problem that we need to call this shit out. And if you don't see it with this conflict with Russia and Ukraine as an example, we're supposed to be okay. Kyle Kalinske says, oh, it's just a small amount of Nazis in Ukraine. So we're supposed to be okay with that as Black people? We're supposed to just be like, oh, okay, it's just a little of that. What? So here it is in this progressive space, which is really, I told you, it's not really for Black people. They really want you. They want you to either hide or suppress your Blackness or Black issues, but they want you to also embrace theirs. But you got to hide who you are. You got to hide the policies that affect your community, but you're supposed to embrace the ones that affect theirs. This is a problem. Let's go back in because she tried to take it back. She tried to take it back, but it did not work. So she went on to say, in a conversation with Laura Cherner, who directs the Community Relations Council, Lee, 34, rejected such claims, noting that she absolutely believes in Israel's legitimacy as a Jewish state. See here, now she got to go kiss their ass. You see? If she said what she said, stick to what you said. So then it goes on to say, what's more is that I also understand and really truly believe the need that we have for Jewish folks globally to have a safe haven. I think that our role has to be in how we are ensuring the safety of all folks over there right now. And see, this is the key. Even though she walked it back, when you say all, that includes the Palestinians, and that's really not what they wanted to hear. So she did that. She walked it back, and AIPAC still went up against her in her primary, and now going up against her in the general election and supporting the Republican candidate. Black people, we got to stop doing this. We have to stop doing this. She embarrassed herself. You took back what you really meant, and they still challenge you anyway. We cannot continue to make ourselves look foolish. I don't care whose movement it is, whether it's Bernie Sanders' movement or AOC movement. We cannot continue to put ourselves at the back of the line and put our issues at the bottom of the list. We cannot. And you guys just saw, I covered this last night on my channel. You saw how many of the white left commentators came out in support of Bree. Wasn't that many. Wasn't that many. That's why I tell you, it is not for us. It really isn't. See how well, let them see how well they do without us. That's what I got to say about that. That story for me is just so, God, like it just, I hate when people just sell themselves short or try to have to change who they are so they can please like the people that hold the money. Oh no, I don't really mean that. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't try to like put up money against me. I'm sorry. No, Nina Turner did the same thing. Let me walk it back. I support the Jewish community. That's not what I really meant. And she still lost. They still put up money against her. What a waste. I'm going to go to some of the comments. Such a mess. Thank you for the super sticker, JM. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Donald grabbed, I'm not going to say that. Yee 2024. I don't know about him either. God knows. Everybody's losing it. CE Foyer, Sabby, can you make t-shirts that say this is a problem? That would be funny, right? Somebody probably already has that made by now, I would think. Maybe. Okay. We're coming around 6:32. Let's go ahead and dive into our second story. Again, this is in reference to the midterms. You guys are probably going to hear a lot about this next week because that is the big thing that's happening around here. But we need to talk about how close these races are. Like some of these races shouldn't even be close, right? So you have John Fetterman and Dr. Oz. By the way, Dr. Oz pulled ahead of John Fetterman yesterday. Still really close. And Warnock and Walker are in a tie. Now, someone explain this to me, okay? Because Walker, he is the incumbent. How you getting a tie? Or excuse me, not Walker, but Warnock. Warnock is the incumbent. How are you getting a tie with Herschel Walker? Do you see how bad this is? Do you see how bad it is? This is terrible. But look, let me show you. This is where we're headed. I'm going to share this clip here of Steve. Now, you guys are probably familiar with this guy. He always has on khaki pants and he breaks down. He's basically going to give us an overview of the midterms. And there's something he says here that's important. So let's walk through this. And then I have another actually election forecast I want to show you for the midterms from 538. And then there's a ballot issue in Pennsylvania already. Like we haven't even nothing started yet. They already got problems. So let's go right into it. Let's get there.
Steve, set the scene for us. What are you watching?
Well, what you mentioned, one of the reasons for that Republican confidence, you're talking about historically how the president's party does in a midterm election. This is what that history looks like. It is pretty grisly for the White House party. Going back here to 1942, what you're seeing are the House seats, the red ink. Those are lost House seats in midterm elections for the White House party. Just two exceptions where the White House party actually gained seats. It was 1998, Bill Clinton. This is as Republicans were gearing up to impeach him. Bill Clinton's approval rating on election day 1998. Remember, impeachment backfired politically. His approval rating was 68%.
That piece right there. Bill Clinton's approval rating in 1998 was 68%? 68%. I wanted you to hear that number. And not that I'm a fan of Bill, but I wanted you to hear that number. You know why? Joe Biden don't have that approval rating. I don't think Obama had that approval rate. Do you see the difference? And the White House administration that year did not lose seats. They gained seats. That doesn't look like that's going to happen this time around.
On election day 1998, and that allowed his party to buck history and gain 5 seats. And in 2002, George W. Bush and the Republicans did it as well. This was just over a year after 9/11. Bush's approval rating was in the mid-60s on election day 2002. And again, his party gained seats. So Democrats hoping to defy history this year. You're up against all of this red ink here. You're also up against 2 exceptions where, hey, Joe Biden's in the low mid-40s right now. He's not in Bush 02, Clinton 98 territory. So the history is certainly intimidating. It's imposing for the Democrats right now. Something else this is a Gallup poll this week that looked at the top issues to voters, asking voters, what do you rank as extremely important as you make up your mind? And again, no surprise, we see this in every poll. It's the economy. It's inflation that's at the top of this. Abortion abortion, number two, an issue obviously that emerged mid-year with that Supreme Court ruling as a
I would even question the 42% in reference to abortion, because I've seen polls where it was actually lower than that. But again, every single poll that I've seen, the economy is the number one issue. And that's why I said it was an absolute mistake for the Democratic Party to try to run solely on abortion and make that be this is going to be Roe-vember. Remember they said that? I'm like, that is your primary focus. You must not realize that the majority of Americans are looking at their bank account. That's what's hitting a lot of people right now. Third is crime. 4 is gun policy. And 5th is immigration. And what's really interesting, even in reference to crime, I think some of that is related to the media. The media has been fear-mongering people about the crime's increasing, it's going up, everything's happening. I think that's part of it. Gun policy may have something to do with in reference to the school shooting that happened in Texas with the Uvalde Police Department. But in immigration, as much as we hear people complain about immigration, that's actually at the bottom of the list.
big part of this election than crime, gun policy, immigration. What's striking is when they asked folks, okay, if you consider the issue extremely important, how are you going to vote? Look at how it breaks here. On 4 of the 5 issues, you have Republican advantages, and on 3 of them, you have pretty massive, the economy, crime, and immigration, pretty sizable Republican advantages there.
You guys see this? So all of the categories here in red, that is the Republican advantage. The only advantage the Democratic Party has for the midterms is abortion. You see why you don't run on one issue? We talked about this on Rising. I had this conversation, and I was telling the gentleman, there was another gentleman there on the panel, and I told him, I said, nope, most Americans are concerned about the economy and inflation. And he said, well, most Americans don't want to have their rights taken away. What do these polls show you? And this is what I was trying to explain to him. If you're poor, if you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay for groceries next month, abortion is not going to be the number one issue on your mind. I think that's what people that, a lot of the pundits, they don't understand that, especially if they're not working class. They've never been working class. If they're not living in poverty, if they've never lived in poverty, they don't understand that. So he's showing you the Republicans have the advantage here.
The one exception, obviously, is the issue Democrats have probably been running the hardest on. That's abortion. They do find a double-digit Democratic advantage on abortion. So overall, that climate, that issues climate, seems to favor Republicans as well. Where they could get tripped up, though, one place Republicans could get tripped up, as we look at the Senate map here, is the recruitment of candidates, the candidates they ended up with through primaries. Donald Trump took a very active role and got through a lot of candidates in key Republican Senate primaries. Could it cost Republicans key seats they might otherwise win, and that chance to get the net gain in the Senate? Could they lose it? So what you see here in blue, those are the most vulnerable Democratic seats where Republicans are trying to play offense. In red, the most vulnerable Republican-held seats.
I had to pause him here. How the Democrats, how are you at risk for losing Colorado? This is how bad they've done. How are you at this close of a risk to losing a state like Colorado? Ay.
Where Democrats are trying to get flips. And just take a look, a couple of these here in Georgia. If you're following politics this year, you are familiar with the struggles Herschel Walker has had, the revelations, the accusations, the campaign trail stumbles. Is Herschel Walker going to fall short against Warnock in a year that might?
I just got to cut in here and say he just mentioned all the struggles that Herschel Walker has had during his campaign and all the allegations that have come out against him. And I just want to remind you, and for those of you who are just joining, they are now tied. They are tied. That's how terrible the Democratic Party has been. He's tied with the incumbent who doesn't have any of those issues on his resume, doesn't have any of those accusations. And they're tied.
might otherwise be favorable there for a Republican in Georgia. Blake Masters has been underperforming. Kerry Lake, the gubernatorial candidate, as he runs for Senate in Arizona, was Masters a weak nominee there. J.D. Vance got that nomination in Ohio, Trump state twice, but Vance has been in a fight with Ryan in the polls. We'll see about that one. And then Pennsylvania won. Democrats. This is a flip. If Democrats can get it, they badly need it. Mehmet Oz, the Republican nominee, again, Trump-backed. There was another candidate in the primary, McCormick, there, who a lot of Republicans think might have been stronger in a general election against Fetterman. But Oz is who Republicans will go with. Oz is who Trump-backed.
And Oz just pulled ahead of Fetterman in the polls, but it's still really close. Now, I do want to bring up this election forecast here from 538 because I think it's important for people to take a look at this as well. I did have a poll a couple of nights ago about who people thought, or if they thought the Democrats would lose the House or the Senate or both. And this is interesting. This is kind of in line with the results of the poll that I had. So let me go ahead and bring this bad boy up. I think it's big enough. Okay. In reference to the midterms, it's a dead heat for the Senate. So here we go. They're looking, this is what they're predicting. Republicans win 55 and 100. And I want to pull this up so you can see how it looks across the line. They made this look like a football field. I think someone who did this actually likes sports or something, because this does kind of remind me of a football field. Democrats win 45 and 100. So this is going to be close. It's going to be tight. Like I said, the race right now between Fetterman and Oz, it's close. And the race right now between Warnock and Walker is also very close. So right now, they don't really know. It could be a toss-up. That's why they say it's a dead heat, right? Okay, let's go on. Republicans are favored to win the House. So let me just jump in here for a second before I show you the numbers. When you are trying to pass legislation, it has to pass in the House first. So as long as we have seen the legislation pass in the House and then we get pissed off because Joe Manchin or Sinema or the parliamentarian or whoever wants to play the rotating victim this time comes in and they vote against it and that prevents the legislation from passing, this time it's going to be the opposite. This time, if Republicans win the House, and like it says, they're favored to win it, that legislation isn't even going to make it out of the House. So good job, Democrats, with doing things that you said you would not do and for not filling promises that you said you would do. Now, let's go ahead and take a closer look here. So this is a simulation. So they're predicting Republicans win 84 and 100. So you can see how they're showing the lines here, 255 rep seats. So, right? And then they're predicting that Democrats will win 16 in 100. So you can see what's happening here, right? This is the prediction. This is the prediction. Now, let me go down one more here. Woo. Are these the circles I wanted to show? There was one more thing I wanted to show you. Okay, yes, this map. Each party's chances of winning the 36 governorships up for election. So the governor races, they also looked at as well. And so when it comes to the governor's forecast, let me click on that. I got to actually zoom out just a little bit because it's a little too large. Okay, there we go. Here's the forecast for governor. Now I'm going to point, there's certain ones here that I want to kind of point to. Massachusetts and Maryland are almost certain to flip to Democrats. I can attest to that. I'm here in Massachusetts. I can't speak for Maryland, but I have family there. But I'm here in Massachusetts. Governor Baker is not running again. He is a Republican, for those who may not know. I think a lot of people assume that Massachusetts is all blue and our governor's blue. Nope. And so he's not running again. So that is likely to flip to blue. And then Republicans have a decent chance to pick up Nevada, Wisconsin, and thanks to an unusual three-way race, Oregon. That's one of the ones I wanted to point to. So let me go up here. You see this? Oregon actually has a chance of flipping to a Republican governor. Oregon, the state that decriminalized all drugs. You see what I mean? So these are the kind of changes that are happening here. And then, yes, someone said three-way race. Yes, because it's Tina Kotek, who's a Democrat, Christine Drazen, who's a Republican, Betsy Johnson as other. It won't let me see the whole. It's too, it says it's a toss up, but it won't let me see the whole thing. Maybe if I zoom out just a little bit more, because when I hover over it, okay, there we go. Yeah, it's pretty close. 43.2% and 42.6%. That one's pretty close. And I don't know if anyone in the chat lives in Oregon. If you do, let me know. I want to know like what happened. Maybe I'll reach out to Oz and be like, what happened here? But then another one that I want to point to as well. Some states will probably elect someone from the same party for senator and for Senate and governor. Some states, such as Kansas, could buck that trend. And in Arizona, a big gulf in candidate quality could lead to a split decision. Meanwhile, weak candidates, good Lord, I can't talk tonight. Weak candidates have cost the GOP chances in states that you'd expect to be close. Now, that's Democrat Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She's pretty comfortable in Michigan, so it looks like she'll be fine. And the race between Democrat Josh Shapiro and Republican Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania is barely competitive. However, Republicans also have some well-positioned incumbents. Ahead of a potential presidential bid, Governor Ron DeSantis is very likely to win re-election. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, and in Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp look pretty secure in their seats, despite facing famous Democratic opponents, Beto and Stacey Abrams. And after everything that has happened in Texas with the school shooting and the winter freeze, when people didn't have food and they didn't have electricity, and with them removing the abortion rights or restricting it to where I think it had to be anything after 6 weeks, a woman couldn't have an abortion in Texas. Even after all of that, people still don't want you, Beto. Beto still wants to be president, and they still don't want you. After everything bad that Governor Abbott has done, the people still do not want Beto. Now, Delilah is the best choice. She's the Green Party candidate. But of course, they're not even going to mention Delilah. So it's oh my God, it's so frustrating. But this is what happens when, and I want to point out to Georgia, it was brought to my attention that apparently Georgia was actually giving people checks in their state. And that was under Brian Kemp. But you got to see the change here, because when Stacey ran against Brian last time, that was a very close race. Remember, she didn't want to really concede. She said every vote will count. Very, very close. Not the case this time. So what changed? Right? Why are they not so willing to come out for her anymore? Because she's a horrible candidate. I told you, Stacey Abrams is a fraud. She spoke out against defunding the police. She came out against that, thinking that would help her. Her poll numbers decreased after she came out against defunding the police. So there you go. There you go. And by the way, Stacey Abrams is not a progressive candidate, not a grassroots candidate. She takes corporate money. And she still can't win. Still can't win. Now, there's more because this still is not over. Pennsylvania is already having issues with their ballots. I kid you not. And we got to give a huge shout out to Case Study QB for this. Like I said, it's not even November 8th yet. And there's already issues. Already issues. Thank you so much to Case for doing the damn thing. Listen to this. You're not going to believe it unless you live there and you already know this. But here we go.
Voters will be casting ballots in person in less than a week, but it could take a lot longer to find out the winners in one of the nation's biggest battlegrounds, Pennsylvania. Senior national correspondent Rich Edson is live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Rich, how long are we talking about here? Days, weeks, months?
Could be hours deep into election night, John. It could be several days. Take the case of Lancaster County, where we are right now. Back in the primary in May, because of the expansion of mail-in voting, they now have to get those ballots printed by a private company. That company put the wrong code on some of the ballots. It delayed the whole process by several days.
You guys hear this, right? It's already happening. Already. So they put the wrong code. The company put the wrong code on the ballot. I can't make this up. I can't, like, what's that, Anthony? Anthony said, this is just the start. This will happen all over, I feel. Yeah, you know, Massachusetts, like, they sent us these flyers here asking us basically if we wanted to have a mail-in ballot. And I said, no. I prefer to go in person. The mail don't even show up on time sometimes. Let's be real. No. I prefer to go in person. I know not everyone can, but I'm just saying they've already messed up. They're already making mistakes. So just keep this in mind.
The other part about Pennsylvania state law is that those ballots that are mailed in have to remain sealed until election morning. So if there are any coding problems like that, they'll remain a mystery until election day.
Each county has a different process and different equipment for processing mail-in and absentee ballots. You know, in counties that are smaller, they may be able to report results faster. In larger counties, it might take some time, also depending on what type of equipment they have.
So with all that, the acting Secretary of State says voters should now hand deliver mail-in ballots to their county election office or a drop box just to make sure they meet the deadline and arrive on or before election day.
Oh my God. Right. If you're in the chat and you live in Pennsylvania, please raise your hand and let me know. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy.
Also, a major decision here yesterday by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It ruled that officials cannot count ballots with missing or incorrect dates. They've got to set those ballots aside. State law says voters have to handwrite the date on the outer envelope when they return their mail-in ballots. Republicans sued to enforce that. Pennsylvania Republican leaders cheered that response, what they got from the Supreme Court. Democrats say that those ballots should be allowed to be counted because if you look generally speaking across the country, Democrats are largely the ones using those early mail-in ballots. John, back to you.
Well, if you live in Pennsylvania, there you go. You know, like they done already messed up the codes. You see, it's kind of weird though, right? Considering the fact that this is such a tight race. I don't know, man. I don't know. There's one more thing I want to play too, because I have to head out in just a second. But if you came in after the intro, you did not hear this. So I want you to hear this again.
What's going on?
Because this is how I like to roll out. Well, I think we should roll out this way. I want you to hear this clip again. Want you to hear this again. And this is, and for those who are not aware, let me go ahead and share my screen because I don't think I showed you guys where this came from at the beginning of the stream here. So this is actually from Philip Scott, Audio Experience. So Philip Scott, he's also on YouTube. I think he's also on, I want to say Spotify as well. And he's another one that really advocates for, you know, African Americans, like, leave the fucking Democratic Party, right? I want you to listen to what he said his dad told him about the Democratic Party. Listen to this.
I said, but tell me about the Democrat Party. Have they done anything for black people in all the years that you have seen black people voting? Have they done anything for black people? Could you just name one thing that you could tell me concrete, like, yes, the Democrat Party has done this, and that, and this is why we vote for them so much. My father told me that the Democrat Party has done nothing for black people. He said that they come around every 2 years, knocking on your door, leaving flyers and all of that, going to your church, asking us to vote for them. And he said, after you vote for them, they disappear. You never see them again until 2 years later. Then here they coming back, saying the same thing. He said, you never see them in the community. You don't know really anything they're doing. And it's a perpetual cycle that's been happening for a long time.
And people still keep doing the same thing. I want to go ahead and go to the comments. There are a couple comments on Rockfin, I believe. I want to make sure I get those as well. Make this a little bit larger for the peoples in the back. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Thank you for the comments on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Thank you for the tip. We're the only one that does this to each other because we have neglected the social safety net infrastructure that we build for ourselves, making us dependent on institutions, businesses, and orgs not owned or built by us. Don't know if you listened to podcasts I sent when he was talking about his dad telling him recently how Moynihan policies have devastated our community by adopting integration. And thank you for this tip as well. Coloradians and Oregonians. Is it Oregonians? Oh, well, Oregonians will be all right. They can directly pass and repeal their own laws and amend their constitution regardless. Question is, will this major loss for those on the left make them turn to the ballot initiative process? Massachusetts and New York looks like trading party governors. We need more BI states, less enlist organizations that will help us transform states like mine to push state lawmakers to do this. Thank you so much for that, Roger Meadows. And then I want to go to these comments here. I want to make sure I don't miss. Thanks for the super chat, Big Cat's Corner. Thank you for calling out Left Tube, specifically the whites for not covering the BJG hate from NAFO trolls and Joe C. Made me start making my videos. Yeah. I mean, it was noticeable, you know. And thank you for this super chat, Roger Meadows. Rock. Yeah, I just read Rockfin. So thank you so much for that. All right, guys, I am heading out. I will be live again at 8 p.m. If you want more Sabby in your life, I'll be live at 8 p.m. on my channel. Steve Grumbine is going to be coming on for a little bit. We're going to do a deep dive into this Federal Reserve announcement about raising the interest rates. And Steve is going to approach this from an MMT perspective. So we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to discuss, well, I'll just show you guys. Shoot. It takes too long saying all this. It takes too long seeing all this. What are we talking about? What am I? Oh, yeah, let me share my screen. It's so different when I'm doing this by myself. Okay, yeah. So at 8 p.m. On my channel, I'll be discussing Richard Wolff and Anna Kasparian Democrat issue, Tucker Carlson and Lee warning, and that has to deal with Twitter, Meta, and Homeland Security. And definitely don't miss that. That's important. The interest hikes, that's who that guy is there in the pink. He's the chair of the Federal Reserve. And question number 5 on the ballot from Massachusetts, which is Medicare for all. So we're going to be covering all of that. Other than that, guys, it's time for me to head out. Have a good night and keep up the fight.